Hey guys, happy Sunday morning. It's House Church. My name is Billy. I want to encourage anybody who wants to take this recording, maybe bring some people together on a Tuesday night, or maybe it's Sunday morning for you, whatever it might be. Watch the recording. It's usually only 10 to 15 minutes, and then discuss, have some time of prayer, and really do fellowship, do house church in your own home. But today, the topic that I want to talk about is how should we act? How should we act? And when we wake up every day, that should really be a key thought, a key question on our mind. How should I act today? And it can go one of two ways. It can either be dependent upon what happens to us in our day, and therefore we wake up not really knowing how we should act because it depends on what happens to us. Or we wake up knowing how we should act no matter what happens in the day, and I think that is a more sane, logical, and steady way of acting, and I believe it's also the way that the Bible teaches us to act. It should be based on something that is not variable. How we act should be based on something that is constant. Now, here's what we know. How we act depends on who we believe we are, and who we believe we are depends on who we believe that we belong to, or who our God is in our life. Now, I don't have time to get deep into it, but everybody has a God. Even if you are your own God, everybody has some authority in their life that determines for them the actions they'll take and what they'll believe, etc. Now, here's what I believe. I believe that pretty much everybody acts out of one of two core emotions, two core beliefs. And those two core emotions or beliefs are either fear or love. I believe the opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. Fear is the more core thing. Fear of losing something, fear of what somebody might do to you, fear of, you get the deal, right? And then the opposite of that is love. Okay, not just love for others, but being filled up with love. Here's what we know from the Bible. The interesting thing is that the Bible says that perfect love drives out all fear, meaning fear cannot exist where perfect love resides. Now, where do we find perfect love? Can I love my wife perfectly? Can I love my kids perfectly? Are you perfect love? No. There is no perfect love that exists other than the love who is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is perfect love. So another way to say that verse, that perfect love drives out fear, is that where Jesus is, where Jesus resides, there is no fear. So if Jesus, now we got to take this back, right? We act based on who we believe we are, and who we believe we are is based on who is our God. When Jesus comes into the picture, when Jesus is our God, when perfect love is our God, when perfect love is what fills us, then we can start every day knowing exactly how we're going to act, because there's not going to be any core emotion or belief of fear in us, but we're going to live off of this perfect love belief, and that's what will flow out to everybody. Now let's see where this talks about this to some degree in the Bible. In 1 Peter chapter 2 is what we're going to dig into a little bit today. There's tons we could cover. We could be here for like a half an hour, but I'm going to kind of fly through it, then you can dig back into it as you read it yourself. But the first place I want to go is, I want to go in backwards order, right? So we act based on who we believe we are. We believe who we are based on who we believe we belong to, or who our God is. Let's go first with Jesus, who is perfect love, drives out all fear. Okay, we can live without any fear, but just love, love, love. This is in 1 Peter 2, verses 21. You can read down to 25. I'm not going to read all of it. But 21 says, "For God called you to do good, even if it means suffering. For just as Christ suffered for you, you should do the same. He is your example, and you must follow in his steps. He never sinned. He never deceived anyone. He did not retaliate when he was insulted. He didn't threaten revenge when he suffered. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly." Jesus lived from a place of love, not fear. Jesus was never scared. Okay, maybe in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was a little bit like, God, I'm not sure I want to do this. But I don't believe Jesus was ever scared. He lived from this place of love. That's why when the priests accused him after they arrested him, Pilate says to him in Mark chapter 15, I believe, verse 5, Pilate says to him, hey, don't you want to defend yourself? Like, you're going to get nailed to a cross if you don't. Jesus is operating out of love, so it doesn't matter what came to him that day. If he got arrested that day, if something happens out of the blue that day, what Jesus is able to do is say, no, I'm already grounded in something. I'm not scared of anything that comes at me. I know my mission, I know my purpose, and I don't have any desire or need to retaliate because my whole identity is set in a God who is perfect love and resides in me. Okay, so that's who Jesus was. That's who Jesus is. That's who we should be like. Okay, now we take a step back, right? And we say, now that's who Jesus is, so that should define who we are, right? Remember, we're going through, this is how we act based on who we believe we are. Who we are is based on who we believe our God is, right? Who we belong to. So who are we? Well, then you go back in 1 Peter, same chapter, chapter 2, verse 9 through 10. It says, you are a chosen people. You are royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God, for he called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you had no identity as people, now you are God's people. Once you received no mercy, now you've received God's mercy. You're a chosen people. You're royal priests. Guess what? When you know who you belong to, and when that is Jesus who is perfect love, and that makes your identity chosen people, royal priests, people who had no identity, but now you belong to God, then nothing that comes at you during that day can alter how you are planning on acting that day. Nothing can rattle your world. Nothing can shake your world because you say, look, as we're about to find out, this is not my home. I believe I belong to God, right? And the things that are coming at me, they are not shifting anything inside of me, and nor are they shifting my destiny, where I'm going, where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. So instead of being altered by what comes at me, I want to alter what is out there, right? Instead of being changed by what's coming at me, I want to change what's out there. Does that make sense? Instead of allowing the things that happen in the world, whether they're the things I hope for or they're things that I desperately wish did not happen, whatever it might be, instead of allowing that to alter how I might treat somebody else and act in the world and what I'm going to bring to the world, instead of allowing that to alter me, I want to go out into the world and say, hey, this might not look like what God looks like. This might not look like perfect love, but that makes sense. They don't know him, right? So, but I do. I'm full of perfect love. I should want to say every day, it doesn't matter what comes at me, I'm going to pour out love to the world because love lives in me. I have no fear, so I don't need to worry about what's coming at me. I can just pour and pour and pour more and more love. Last thing. So we know who we belong to and what he acted like. We know who we are, chosen people, a royal priesthood. Then it says, here's how you should act. Verse 11, same verse, 11 through 12. Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners, so important. Keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls. Be careful that the world and the things that come at you don't shake you up. Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors. Then even if they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your honorable behavior and they will give honor to God when he judges the world. This is very simple. What we've now learned is that we belong to God, that he is perfect love. There is no fear in him. Okay? He didn't retaliate. He laid down his life. He suffered. Okay? He served. Then we know because of that, because we belong to him, we're a chosen people. We're a royal priesthood. Our job is to go out there with the identity of God's chosen person and love the world. And then he just reminds us, guess what? You're temporary residents and foreigners. This world's not your home. Why are you hanging on to it so desperately? Why are you so worried about what happens out here in the world when your home is already there? You already belong to there. That's where you're going. And your only job here is to take more people with you from here to there. That should be the focus. And he says, if you want to do that, you can't let the worldly things that happen, that the ups and downs of every day come at you and adjust you, alter you, change who you are, change how you act. You've got to wake up every day knowing exactly how you're going to act, knowing exactly what you're going to give, and give it without measure to every single person, whether they agree with you or don't. And it just ends and it says, then they'll see your honorable behavior and they will give honor to God when he judges the world. At the end of the day, how should we act? We should act as Jesus acted, because what Jesus did for us was he brought us into an adoption, into a relationship with God. And now that we're God's children, we're no longer children of the world. Now that we belong to the kingdom of heaven, we're no longer, kind of earthbound dwellers that this is it. This is not it, right? There's something greater. And because there is something greater, we should give in greater measure. And we should do it in such a way that people around us go, this is incredible. Look how they love, no matter what comes at them. Thanks, guys.